Mrs. Ward, may I remind you you're still under oath?
I'm going to let you say this in your own words. Please, tell the court what you just told us in chambers.
At 18 years old, I was a war widow. I was trying to make ends meet, singing in a nightclub outside Norfolk, Virginia, which catered to Navy enlisted men. I had a way with the blues. One night, a young Navy lieutenant came in, and he took a table by himself. And that wasn't unusual, but I noticed the way he just listened. And I also noticed the way he kept coming back. And then finally one night, he came backstage and he introduced himself. And we went out for a drink. And we discovered that we had a way of relating to each other. Two young people affected by a war, facing an uncertain future. But mostly it was the music that drew us together. So we became lovers, briefly. Then he was shipped overseas, and we corresponded for a while. And then I found out that I was pregnant. I wrote to him to tell him this, and I said that I had no expectation of a future with him. I told him I was bringing his child into this world. He wrote back and said that he would offer any help he could. But I chose not to answer that letter, but I kept it. And when my son was born, I named him Bradley.
And when did you see Bradley's father again, face to face?
The night Bradley died. But most of it happened as I testified. Bradley came to see me, we talked, and then he went to lie down in his room, and I went to my own room. But I didn't undress. For a long while, I just lay there thinking and tried to come to terms with what I had to do. So I got the letter from his father, and I left the house.
And where did you go?
I went to the Port Charles apartment of Edward Quartermain.
What time did you arrive at Mr. Quartermain's apartment?
I don't know, around, well, it was before midnight, perhaps. I rang the bell, he opened the door, and I apologized to him for disturbing him. He didn't know who I was. I'm sorry to disturb you.
May I be of assistance?
You certainly may. I'm Bradley Ward's mother, Mary May Ward. Mary May Powers Ward?
I have no idea.
I realize that.
Please, come in.
My son came to me tonight, and he told me everything. I know all about Elizabeth Jackson, Kylie Quinlan, and the child they lost when someone ran them off the road. I also know what you and your friends are trying to do to him. But you are going to see to it that they leave him alone. This is why.
You kept the letter?
For 30 years, I've never shown this to anyone, not even Bradley. But I'm here to tell you that If you don't do what I ask, I am going to tell the whole world that Bradley Ward is your son. That night, Edward Quartermain found out he had another son. He had the proof. Edward could not, he would not have put a gun to his own son's head and murdered him in cold blood. Never.
Objection. Conclusion on the part of the witness.
Sustained. Stick to the facts, please, Mrs. Ward.
Mrs. Ward, what did you do when you left Edward Quartermain's that night?
I went home. Bradley was still lying across the bed, fully dressed, but I didn't stop and speak to him. I went to my room and I put on my night clothes. But I didn't sleep, not then. After a long while, I heard him go downstairs, make a phone call.
To whom?
I couldn't hear what he said, but I know he didn't come back upstairs. So I assumed that he was getting something to eat or sitting in the living room because he couldn't sleep. And I didn't think I could sleep either, but I did. And the next thing I know, I was awakened by what I now realize was a gunshot. I heard the second shot clearly. Right away, I knew it was bad. And I've described to you how I found his body. You can understand, knowing his frame of mind and finding the gun in his hand, how I thought he killed himself. So you can also understand how I blamed myself as I sat there holding him in my arms. If I had stopped in his room and told him the truth about his father, would it have ended differently? Even now, I wonder. I don't know how long I sat there. I got an old shovel. I went to the shed and dug his grave. It was the most I could do for him at that time, and I tried to do it right. And I laid his body very gently in their grave. And I said goodbye to him. I sat there with him, keeping him company till the sun rose. Then went into the house, got dressed, and I went to see Edward Quartermain again.
Oh, Mary May, I tried to do what you asked, but I'm afraid it may be out of my hands.
Yes, it is. And you can tell your friends that Bradley won't be a problem anymore. He's dead.
What?
By his own hand.
Oh, God.
And you don't have to worry about finding the body. All you can do for your son now is to ensure that the investigation won't destroy the very things he tried to protect by killing himself. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Leave him his good name for his sake, for the sake of his wife, for the sake of his children, your grandchildren. He did good work. People loved him. People believed in him. And he can't hurt you anymore, so just leave him alone.
We've heard testimony that Edward Quartermain did indeed use his influence to have the investigation terminated.
I'm sure he would. It was the least he could do.
Mrs. Ward, is there anything further you'd like to add?
Now, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. That'll be all.